The air is thick with soot and the bitter stench of coal. You arrive at the factory gates before sunrise, your boots already damped with mud from the unpaved streets. Fog curls between the chimneys above like grey snakes, hiding the sky. You are not alone. A dozen other figures stand silently nearby. Men, women, even children, all waiting to be admitted. This is your first day. The building looms like a fortress, all brick and smoke. You clutch your coat tighter around you, though it offers little warmth. The bells chime 6, and the great iron doors creak open. Inside, it's darker still. A supervisor greets the group with a barked list of rules. No talking, no wandering. Any break in behavior means wages docked, or worse, dismissal. You nod silently with the others, not out of agreement but necessity. The floor is already slick with oil and water. Machines grind to life with groans and clatters. The noise is overwhelming, like standing beside a waterfall made of metal. Your post is assigned. Spinning. Rows of worry frames stretch down a corridor lit only by high windows covered in grime. The air is heavy with lint, and within minutes your throat itch. You're shown how to feed the thread, how to keep fingers away from the belts, and what to do if the machine jams. You're warned, don't stop it. Call for help. If your hand gets caught, he trails off, but the meaning is clear. The first hour passes slowly. The machine's rhythm becomes a kind of heartbeat. Relentless, unfeeling. You feel time in the dull ache creeping into your shoulders, not in any clock. By midday, your stomach growls. The break is 10 minutes. Your hands shake as you eat bread that's gone hard from the morning cold. No one speaks. You stare at the exit door, wondering, how long until this becomes normal? You already know the answer. Not long at all. The second day begins before your body is ready. You wake to soreness in muscles you forgot existed. Your hands are stiff, your legs ache, and your back hums with pain from the endless hours of standing. But there is no time to stretch or hesitate. The bell will ring soon, and lateness is punished more harshly than mistakes. You walk the same fog-laced streets, past rows of chimneys still belching black smoke into the sky. At the gates, the crowd is quieter today. Some faces are missing. Whether from illness or injury, you don't know. Inside, the factory air is already alive with the groan of gears and belts. You return to your post, the same machine, the same rhythm, spin, feed, thread, twist, repeat. Time disappears. There is no morning or afternoon, only the next spool, and the next. You begin to understand how people lose themselves here. How they forget the sound of their own voice, the feel of silence, the meaning of hours. The machine offers no pause. It demands total attention. You see the others, now with clearer eyes. The girl beside you, no more than 12, has a long red welt on her arm. A belt lash, perhaps, or an accident. She works in silence, her movements efficient but mechanical. The man 2 frames down, coughs constantly. You are learning. Weakness is noted, but not pitied. During the break, you sit on a crate, breathing shallowly. The walls are stained, the windows cracked. Outside, the sun tries to break through the grime but fails. Someone near you mutters, "Only 6 days until Sunday." It's not comfort, just measurement. A way to hold time still in a place where clocks don't seem to matter. Back at the frame, your mind begins to drift. You hum quietly, just to hear a sound that isn't made by metal. But the supervisor walks past and snaps. No noise work. You bite your tongue. By the end of the shift, your fingertips are raw. Your hair is dusted with lint. Your ears ring with the phantom clatter of gears. As you walk home, each step feels heavier than the last. You don't think of quitting. There is no alternative. Only tomorrow. And the day after. And the day after that. By your 3rd day, you've begun to sense it before you see it. The presence of the overseer. Not just the man himself, but his shadow. He walks the rows without sound. Eyes, always searching, never soft. A man with a clipboard in one hand and a long stick in the other. He doesn't use it often. But the threat is always there, resting against his leg like an extension of his authority. He stops by each station at random, inspecting fingers, checking spools, timing movements. He has no interest in names, only speed and silence. When he comes to you, you keep your head down. You've learned to hide your shaking hands, to pretend that the aches in your wrists aren't getting worse, that the thread slicing your fingers hasn't drawn blood. He watches you for a moment longer than usual, then, faster, no greeting, no complaint, just the one word. He moves on. You feel your breath return, only when he's down the next row. The girl beside you whispers, "He watches everyone like that, like we're part of the machines." You glance at her hands. The tips bandaged with dirty cloth. "What happens if we're too slow?" you ask. She doesn't answer at first. Then, first time. Warning. Second. Docked P. She taps her stick-thin wrist, where a bruise still lingers. She doesn't smile. The overseer comes back around later. A boy working near the flywheel has fallen behind. His machine is jammed, thread tangled around the spindle. He's trying to fix it, but his fingers are clumsy. The overseer doesn't yell. He simply grabs the boy by the collar and hauls him back, pushing him down with one hand while using the stick to point at the machine. "Don't touch it when it's running." He snaps his fingers. Another worker steps in to fix the jam. The boy isn't punished further, not this time, but he isn't helped either. You feel the lesson settle in your chest like dust. You are not a person here. You are labor. You are movement. You are only seen when something goes wrong. By the end of your first week, the air in the factory feels heavier. You didn't notice it at first. The noise was more overwhelming, the machines more frightening. But now that your hands move automatically, now that your steps follow the same lines on the floor every day, you notice it. The thick, clinging lint that floats through the air. It settles on your clothes, in your hair, under your fingernails, and worse, it settles in your lungs. You begin to cough. So does nearly everyone else. It's not a wet cough. Not yet. Just a persistent tickle at the back of your throat that never quite goes away. The girl next to you carries a rag tied around her mouth when the overseer isn't looking. She says her sister used to work here too. She got chest rot, she whispered, was coughing blood by the time they let her go. You ask what happened to her. She just looks away. The lint clings to everything. The windows, the wires, the very light in the air. It makes the factory look like it's always in a snowstorm. Only dirt. There's no real ventilation, no open windows. The overseer says they must stay shut to keep the thread dry. Your throat burns every evening. You drink water by the pail when you get home, but it doesn't help much. Some of the older workers wear wool scarves tied tight over their faces, but they are few. Most can't afford the fabric. You ask Ellen, a woman who has worked in the spinning room for years, how she manages. You get used to it, she says, but you can hear it in her voice. That rasp, that weariness. You know what it is. Years of breathing, lint, dust, and the fine powder of dried sweat and grease that coats every inch of this place. During lunch, someone jokes that the factory makes cloth out of your lungs as much as cotton. No one laughs. Later that day, a boy collapses from the heat and choking air. The overseer carries him out by the arm and returns alone. No explanation, no apology. The machine he was working at doesn't stop. Someone else is already in his place. The days blur. Each shift runs into the next. Each ache bleeds into the one before. But then, finally, comes Sunday. But a pause. You wake later than usual. The light in the window is different. Gray, still, but without the urgency of a workday. Your muscles still ache. Your throat still burns. But your body is grateful for the extra sleep. There is no bell this morning. No overseer's bark. Just quiet. Sunday's the only day the factory closes. By law, you wash your face in cold water, change into your best clothes, which are really just your cleanest, and step outside. The street feels different. Slower. There's no rush of boots, no line at the gates, no coal smoke rising from the chimneys. Children play in the alley, their laughter thin but real. Women hang laundry between soot-streaked buildings. A man pushes a cart full of newspapers, shouting headlines no one can afford to read. You walk without purpose, just to feel the cold on your face, just to move without being watched. Many workers go to church, some for belief, some for routine, some simply because it's warm. Inside, the air smells of wax and damp stone. The pews are filled with faces like yours, drawn, tired, marked by soot and thread cuts. The preacher speaks of suffering as a gift, of poverty as a test, of reward waiting beyond this life. You don't know if you believe him, but the silence is nice. After the service, you stay seated, just a while longer. The stillness feels foreign, like a language you haven't spoken in weeks. You close your eyes. You think of your old home. Before workhouses and factory bells and lint-filled lungs. A room with a door that locked. A fire that didn't go out. The sound of your child breathing in the next bed. You open your eyes before the memory hurts too much. Back outside, the world continues. There's a man playing fiddle on a corner, a girl selling hot potatoes from a basket. You buy one. It costs too much, but it's warm and real and comforting. And then, the afternoon begins to fade. The sun never really shines, but the sky darkens anyway. You walk back toward the lodging house. Already, you hear the distant hum of machines warming up for the morning. Tomorrow, the rhythm begins again. But today was yours, however briefly. The machine doesn't care if you're tired. It doesn't slow down when your eyes blur or your fingers slip. It doesn't pause when the thread snarls or the shuttle skips. It keeps moving, fast, hungry, indifferent. On your 10th day, you see your first accident up close. It begins with a shout. Sharp, panicked, human, the kind of sound that doesn't belong in the factory's usual drone. You turn, just in time to see a girl, maybe 13, pull her hand back from the spinning frame. There's blood everywhere. Her fingers are bent the wrong way. One isn't there at all. The machine doesn't stop on its own. A man runs over, slaps the emergency brake. The belts whine as they grind to a halt. The overseer is there within seconds. He doesn't comfort her. He doesn't even look concerned. He wraps her hand in a scrap of linen and tells another worker to walk her to the infirmary. Hurry, he says. She's dripping. Not bleeding. Not injured. Just inconvenient. Someone else is sent to clean the floor. You return to your machine, shaken. You try not to look at the red smear on the floorboards. You try not to imagine what the infirmary looks like, or what that girl's life will be now, with one less hand to work. But your fingers tremble. Your movements are slower. The overseer passes behind you. Focus, so you do. You grip the frame tighter. You feed the thread faster. You tell yourself it won't happen to you. But deep down, you know the truth. It happens to everyone eventually. The girl will be back in a week, you're told. If she can still walk, they say she's lucky. They always say, a few days later, you're sent to the infirmary. Not because you're sick, not yet, but because they need someone to scrub floors. The nurse eyes you when you arrive. She's not cruel, just tired. Older than most workers, wrapped in a plain apron stained with things you'd rather not identify. She points to a bucket and says, start in the back. Don't touch the beds. The infirmary smells like soap and old blood, like something always being cleaned but never clean. It's quieter than the factory, but not peaceful. The silence is full of breathy coughing, muffled groans, and the occasional clatter of a bedpan. You pass beds with people in them. Some with bandaged hands, others lying very still. One man has a cloth tied across his chest, his breathing wet and fast. You hear the nurse mutter to herself, too late for poultices now. You don't ask, you just scrub. The girl from the spinning room is there too. You see her in the last bed by the window, her hand wrapped in thick white gauze, eyes staring into nothing. She doesn't move when you pass, doesn't blink. You pause. I hear you whisper. No response. A moment later, the nurse notices and waves you off. Don't talk to them. They need quiet. Quiet, that's all this room has. No music, no laughter, no bird song or breeze. Just pain in different stages. You mop around a boy with a bandaged foot, crushed, someone said, under a cart axle. He winces with every shift of weight, but he doesn't cry. None of them do. They've learned not to. Crying is just another sound no one listens to. By the time you leave, your arms are sore from scrubbing, and your stomach is tight with something worse than hunger. Back in the spinning room, the machines are still roaring, still moving, as if no one was missing, as if no one had ever left. You remember giving your brother's name when you signed on. A long shot, really. He lived 2 towns away, last you heard, and had a family of his own, but you listed him anyway, just in case something went wrong, just in case you didn't come home. Weeks have passed, no letter, no visit, no word at all. At first you thought perhaps the post was delayed, then you considered maybe the overseer had never sent the message at all. Now you simply wonder if your brother chose not to answer. You wouldn't blame him. The factory is full of people who once had someone. A sister, a mother, a husband. But the farther you sink into this place, the more you realize, poverty doesn't just empty your pockets, it erases you from memory. During your lunch break, you sit on the back steps, eating the same dry bread as always. A co-worker named Clara joins you. She's older, has a chipped tooth and a habit of humming under her breath. She asks, "You waiting on someone?" You nod. "Maybe." Clara smiles, not unkindly. "I used to wait to. Husband promised to come fetch me when he found work in Leeds. That was 2 years ago. You ask if she ever heard from him. She shrugs. Maybe he did find work. Maybe he didn't. Maybe he tried. Doesn't matter now. Can't hold your breath forever in a place like this. She pats your shoulder and leaves you there. You look at the horizon. Smokestacks blur the skyline. No birds. No carriages. No sign of life beyond the walls of work. That night, you dream of your brother walking down the lane with a coat over his shoulder and a letter in hand. He says your name like it still matters. You wake before he finishes the sentence, and by morning, the dream is already fading. You don't know all their names. There are too many of them. Children scattered across every room in the factory, their small bodies tucked between belts, spools, and wheels. They move fast. They learn fast. And when they don't, they're replaced. Some are as young as 7. You first notice one, a boy with soot on his cheeks and eyes too large for his face. He's tasked with crawling under the looms, collecting lint, and clearing jams. He's quick, silent, careful. He has to be. They call him a piecer. The word sounds innocent enough, but it hides the danger. He works beneath machines that don't stop. If the belts catch his sleeve, or if he misjudges a gear's rotation, that's it. You've heard the stories. You've seen the scars. He doesn't speak to you, but sometimes you catch his gaze, wary, tired, like someone twice his age trapped in a body still growing. The other children are no different. Girls with scraped knees and broken shoes work the spinning frames with hands red from cold and chemicals. You see one faint from heat and hunger. A supervisor drags her outside. She returns an hour later, slower than before. No one asks why. One girl, perhaps 10, sings softly to herself while working, a tune with no words. The overseer hears and slams his stick against the post. No singing. She doesn't sing again. During the midday meal, the children are given smaller portions. Their bones need more, but they receive less. Some barter crusts of bread like coins. Others just chew slowly, trying to make the moment last. You think of your own childhood. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't this. You had sunlight, you had games, you had quiet. These children have none of that. Just lint, just motion, just the sound of machinery swallowing their youth before they ever had the chance to know what it meant to be young. You never thought about fire until it happened. The factory always seemed indestructible. Solid brick, iron beams, floors soaked with oil and water alike. But one spark is all it takes. It began with a hiss. Someone shouted. Then the smell hit. Sharp, chemical, unmistakable. Smoke followed, pouring from the dye room, like a black wave. You stood frozen for a second, thread still in your fingers, machine still humming. Then the bell rang. Not the shift bell, a different sound. Shrill, continuous, alarming. The overseer shouted. Move. Panic spread faster than the smoke. Dozens of feet pounding down narrow corridors. Someone fell. Someone screamed. The younger workers sobbed as they clutched each other, too terrified to move, until dragged. You couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. The smoke swallowed everything. You reached the main doors with lungs burning. Outside, the air was sharp and cold, clean in a way you hadn't noticed before. You gasped it in like water. Everyone stood there, coughing, wheezing, staring. The flames didn't consume the whole building. Just one room. Contained, they said. The fire brigade came too late to matter, but early enough to give the appearance of control. After an hour, someone declared it safe. And then, unbelievably, they told you to go back in. The fire hadn't touched your section. The machines still worked. So, apparently, could you hesitated? Everyone did. But hesitation doesn't feed you, doesn't shelter you. So you went back in. The air inside still smelled of soot and melted dye. A red haze hung near the ceiling. No one spoke of it after that. Not officially, not during breaks, not even in whispers. But for days after, the coughs worsened, and you started noticing the exits more, measuring the distance from your machine to the nearest door. Just in case it happened again. They tell you the factory's inspected, that someone from the government comes to make sure things are safe, that the children aren't too young, that the hours aren't too long, that no one is dying too quickly. You don't believe it, until one day, he actually arrives. Not with ceremony. No, just a tall man in a black coat with clean boots and a notepad. He walks the rows beside the manager, who wears a tight smile and speaks too loudly. Yes, sir, we follow every regulation. Clean water, regular breaks, no one under the legal age, of course. The inspector doesn't look at you. Not at anyone. He looks at the floor, at the windows, at the belts turning smoothly. He asks no questions, doesn't kneel to see the children beneath the machines, doesn't smell the mold on the walls, doesn't hear the cough that's been rattling in your chest since last Tuesday. He takes notes and leaves. The overseer walks behind him, nodding like a dog. After he's gone, the manager turns to the room. His smile drops. Back to work. The tension evaporates. Everything returns to the same grey rhythm. Later, Clara tells you they always scrub the walls before a visit. They replace the worst rags, hide the bruised workers, time the children's shifts so they look shorter on paper. One year, she says, they sent the inspector to a different mill by mistake. That place was a death trap. 6 kids, gone in one winter. You ask, what happened? Nothing, she shrugs. Paperwork said it was clean, so it was. That night you try to picture what the inspector wrote in his little book. Probably. Facility appears orderly, conditions acceptable. No irregularities noted. You wonder if he sleeps well. The factory feeds you just enough to keep you standing. No more. You've learned to ration your coins. 1 for rent, 1 for soap, 1 for food if the grocer hasn't sold out by the time your shift ends. Some days you skip lunch entirely, just to save a crust for the evening. You tell yourself, hunger sharpens the mind, but it really just slows your steps. Your stomach knots before you even wake now, not from sickness. Just the absence of anything to digest. You chew on stale bread and imagine it's stew. You drink water to fill the hollow inside you. The other workers are no different. Clara nibbles the edges of a biscuit like it's gold. The boy from the frame room tries to eat lint once. Swears it looked like flour. He vomits behind the coal bin, and no one scolds him. Even the overseers look thinner in winter. The worst days are after payday. Not because you're paid, but because the money's never enough. A coin here, a debt. What's left can't stretch far. The baker raises his prices when he knows the mills have paid. The butcher's scraps are gone by noon. You once saw a woman fight a dog for a chicken bone in the alley behind the lodging house. You didn't stay to see who won. You learned, instead, to carry crumbs in your pocket. To never waste broth. To sleep earlier, so the hunger hours passed faster. Sometimes you dream of food. Real food. Butter, warm milk, meat so tender, it falls apart in your mouth. You wake with the taste still lingering, and then the factory bell rings, and the hunger is no longer a dream. It's your shadow. It follows you down every hallway, through every shift, across every weary footstep. The first snow comes quietly. You don't see it fall, only wake to find the world outside the factory washed in grey-white. The streets are slick. The air bites harder than usual. Inside, nothing changes. The spinning frames still whir, the belts still groan. The overseer's voice still cuts through the fog, but everything feels colder. You wear every piece of clothing you own under your uniform. 2 thin shirts, a scarf with holes, a pair of gloves missing the fingertips. Your breath fogs in front of you as you work. The machines don't heat the room. They only vibrate with ceaseless motion, making your fingers ache even faster. The lint in the air seems thicker now, a strange, soft cloud that clings to everything. They call it the white dust. It drifts through the factory like snow, but it's not cold. It's warm, almost sticky, and it gets in your nose, your throat, your lungs. You try not to breathe deeply. You learn to swallow without inhaling. Someone says it's worse in winter because the windows are sealed tight to keep the threads from snapping. You wonder how something so soft can feel so suffocating. The children wear scarves over their mouths now. Even the overseer wraps a cloth around his nose when he does his rounds. You think that says more than he ever will. One afternoon a girl collapses in the dye room. No injury, no visible illness. She just falls. The nurse says, it's the cold, or exhaustion, or maybe the dust. She's taken out on a stretcher and doesn't come back. They replace her before the hour ends. You look around and realize no one is speaking. Not from fear, but because it's too hard to breathe and talk at once. The factory is quieter now, except for the machines. They never lose their rhythm, even in the heart of winter. Ellen always seemed stronger than the rest of you. She was older, maybe 40, with hard hands and a voice like iron. She worked the heavy looms near the dye vats, and never once, in all your days here, did you hear her complain? But then came the cough. It started small, just a clearing of the throat, something easy to ignore. She waved it off with a shrug. Just the cold, she said. The damp always gets in my chest this time of year. You believed her. At first, but the cough grew deeper, drier, more insistent. It echoed through the factory like a loose gear, unnatural and repetitive. The overseer noticed, told her to drink water, told her to work faster, told her not to draw attention. So she did. She worked harder and coughed more. By the third week, she was spitting into her apron. You saw the stains, dark, rust-colored patches that she tried to hide. She looked thinner, grayer, her shoulders hunched lower with each passing day. One morning, she didn't come in. You looked for her at the lunch bell. At the end of day wash, in the crowd leaving through the gate, nothing. You asked quietly. Clara just shook her head. They took her to the infirmary. Will she be back? You asked. She didn't answer. That evening, you walked by the back corridor where the nurses dump old rags and bandages. You thought you heard someone coughing behind the wall. Wet, ragged, desperate. You didn't stop. You couldn't. Because you knew what it meant. Ellen wasn't the first. She wouldn't be the last. And the machines would keep turning, no matter how many coughs faded into silence. At first, you dreamt of home, of warm bread, the creak of the stairwell, the scent of coal, smoke, and comfort. You'd see faces you missed. Your mother smiling at the stove, your brother laughing by the fire. In sleep, everything felt soft, remembered, bearable. But the dreams have changed. Now, when you close your eyes, you hear the machines, even in silence, even in bed. Their rhythm echoes, clack, whir, snap, hum. Sometimes you jolt awake thinking the bell has rung. You reach for your boots before realizing it's still dark outside. One night, you dream you're back at your station. Only the thread won't feed properly. It tangles around your arms, your neck, your chest. The more you try to fix it, the tighter it pulls, wrapping you until you can't breathe. You wake gasping. Another night, you see the overseer standing at the foot of your bed. He doesn't speak, just watches. You can't move, can't scream. When you finally sit up, your mouth is dry, and your heart is pounding. There's no rest here. Even the body forgets how to sleep deeply when every muscle is trained to expect noise. You speak to Clara about it, in hushed voices one morning before the shift. She nods slowly. Happens to everyone eventually. Once the factory gets inside your head, it stays there. Does it ever stop? You asked. She thinks. Not really. You just stop noticing. You don't know what's worse, the noise in your dreams, or the idea that one day, it might become silence. Not because the machines are gone, but because you've accepted their song as part of you. That night, you lie awake a long time, listening, waiting, wondering if you'll ever hear yourself think again. You start walking to the graveyard on Sundays. Not because you know anyone buried there, not yet, but because it's quiet, because it's outside and no one asks anything of you for a little while. The graveyard sits behind the old church, up a muddy lane where the soot fades, just slightly. It's not peaceful. Exactly. The headstones lean at odd angles. Moss creeps up the edges. Some names are too weathered to read, but it's open, and no one yells. You pass Clara there one morning, seated on a flat stone, chewing on a piece of apple as if it's a feast. She nods to you without speaking, then looks back at a small marker. Plain, wooden, barely standing. My sister, she says eventually, died of the cough. They didn't even let her out of the factory until she couldn't stand. Put her in the ground 3 days later. You ask how old she was. 14. You both sit in silence. Children run past the fence line, tossing stones and laughing. For a moment you want to tell them to hush, but you don't. Their noise is the only kind that doesn't hurt your ears. You walk among the graves. Some are fancy, with tall stones and carved angels. Others are just initials, dates, years far too short. Many don't have markers at all. Just mounds in the dirt and the memory of someone who once labored until they couldn't tea anymore. You find one stone that simply reads, Worker Unknown, 1853. You think about that person, about how they had a name once, a family, a story, and now they are just worker. You sit beside that stone a while, not because you knew them, but because you do. Every worker has a secret, a small act of resistance, a ritual, a comfort. Something to remind them they are more than hands and hours. Yours becomes stitching, not grand embroidery, not gowns or lace, just thread pulled through scraps you find discarded. A torn kerchief, a sleeve left in the bin. You hide them in your pocket, and in the quiet moments before bed, you sew, not for money, not to sell, just to remember you can. The act is slow, deliberate, yours. Each night, a few more stitches. Sometimes you sew initials, Sometimes nothing at all. Just shapes, lines, proof that your fingers can do something gentle. It's not much, but it's something. Clara sees you one evening, hunched over a bit of fabric in the corner of the lodging house. She sits beside you, doesn't speak for a long while. Then she reaches into her pocket and pulls out a button. Old brass, worn, smooth by time. From my wedding coat, she says, used to shine like gold. Don't have the coat anymore, but I kept this. She places it on your lap. You sew it into the corner of your cloth that night, anchoring your story to hers. Soon, others start bringing things. A girl gives you a ribbon. The boy from the piecing room offers a broken comb. Bits and pieces, fragments. You stitch them all together. One day it might become something. A shawl, a patchwork scarf, a blanket. But that's not the point. The point is that it's not part of the factory. It belongs to you. And in a place where everything is taken, your hours, your breath, your name, that small square of cloth becomes your flag. A silent banner that says, I am still here. One morning, something strange happens. The bell doesn't ring. At first, you think you've overslept. You jolt upright, the usual panic tightening your chest. But outside the window, the street is still. No footsteps. No line at the gate. No shouting from the overseers. You wait. 5 minutes. 10. You slip outside. The air is cold but strangely silent. Workers stand in clumps near the entrance, murmuring, shivering, confused. Some are still pulling on boots. Others clutch tin mugs, not yet emptied of morning tea. Then someone says it. A man died in the boiler room. The words ripple outward like a pebble tossed into a pond. They say he went in early to light the fires, like always. Something burst. Steam, metal, no one knows. By the time they found him, he was gone. They've shut the room, just for now. Not for investigation, for cleaning. No one cries, no one screams. It's not that kind of place. You watch the manager pace, red in the face, muttering about delays and efficiency. Within the hour, the bell does ring. Late, sharp, apologetic in its tone. The line forms, and you walk inside like always. But something is different today. The factory feels heavier. You pass the door to the boiler room, now chained shut. A single bucket sits outside, filled with water blackened by ash. That evening Clara says the man's name was Henry. She'd worked with him years ago. He used to sing while he stoked the furnace, she says. Had a voice like a bird in spring. You never heard him, and now you never will. You lie in bed later, staring at the ceiling, and wonder what it would take to shut the place down for longer than an hour. More deaths, more silence, or would it ever stop at all? It happens one grey afternoon. You're on break, sitting behind the dye house where the air smells like ink and scorched cloth. You repeeling a potato. One you bartered from a boy with a bruised eye. When someone runs past the fence, not a worker, not a child from the lodging house, a woman. Her dress is torn at the hem, her shoes caked in mud, but she runs like she's flying. Fast, focused, breathing hard. 2 overseers chase after her, shouting, Stop, you're not dismissed. But she doesn't stop. She leaps the ditch, skirts a coal wagon, and disappears into the narrow lanes between buildings. Gone. Just like that. The others murmur, half impressed, half afraid. No one claps. No one dares smile. But in your chest, something stirs. The idea that escape is possible. Not easy, not without risk, but possible. You ask Clara later if she knew her. Lizzie, she says, did packing upstairs. Said she had family in the north. Will they catch her? Clara shrugs. If they do, she'll get a few weeks in jail. Better than here, if you ask me. That night, the supervisors walk the floors more often. The managers speak in clipped tones. Rumors buzz like flies. She stole a coat. She had a plan. Someone helped her. But inside, the thought takes root. You begin to study the factory more closely. The shift rotations. The way the gates unlock during deliveries. The workers who leave early due to illness. You don't make a plan. Not yet. But, for the first time, you consider that you might not have to die here. That maybe, just maybe, even if it's just one pair of muddy shoes and the will to run. It was a Thursday when it happened. You'd just returned from the midday break, stomach half filled with cold potatoes and stale bread. Your fingers were still stiff from the cold, your mind groggy. The spinning room was loud, like always. Belts humming, gears clanking. overseers, barking, and then came the scream. Sharp, fast, too human to ignore. You turned and saw him. The boy. The same small one who worked the frame beside yours. The one with the silent eyes and scabbed knuckles. He was caught. His shirt had snagged on the drive belt. The cloth twisted tight, pulling him forward. His arm was yanked in next, and then his shoulder. It all happened in seconds. And the machine kept moving. You shouted. Others did too. But by the time the brake was pulled, it was too late. The boy crumpled like a rag. The overseer stormed over, furious, not frightened. Who let him get too close? He snapped. These kids know better. No one answered, because everyone knew the truth. The boy was doing his job, cleaning the lint beneath the frame, same as every other day. A doctor came, took one look, shook his head. They wrapped the boy in burlap and carried him out the side door. By the end of the hour, the machine was running again. New boy in his place, slightly taller, just as quiet. You looked at your own machine differently after that. At the belts, at your sleeves, at how close your fingers came to the teeth of the gears with every single spool. That night, you walked slower on your way home. You saw a cat cross the alley ahead, thin, hungry, free. You watched it disappear into the fog, tail high, unconcerned. And for a moment, you envied it. Because even a stray animal has more freedom than the hands who feed the machine. It's rare for someone new to walk into the spinning room. Rarer still for them to look like they don't belong. Clean boots, trimmed beard, eyes that look people in the face. He arrives on a Tuesday, in the middle of the morning shift, carrying a stack of papers and a quiet confidence that makes the overseer nervous. He's a union man. You hear the word passed in whispers. He speaks to the manager first.com/polite. You can't hear the words, but you see the reaction. A clenched jaw, a huff, a dismissive gesture. The union man nods. He doesn't argue, he just moves on, slipping papers into workers' hands as he walks past the machines. One of them ends up in yours. The print is small, but clear. Organized for better pay, shorter hours, safer conditions. You have the right. It feels dangerous just to read. You tuck it into your coat, heart pounding. Not because it's illegal, not exactly, but because everything about it feels forbidden. Hope isn't encouraged here. Neither is unity. That evening, you ask Clara if she's ever heard of unions. She says softly. Back in Manchester, we had one. Worked for a while. Got us 10-hour days instead of 12. What happened? She shrugs. Bosses brought in scabs. Police broke the line. Folks lost work, lost homes. But for a time, we mattered. You think about that all night. What it would mean to matter, not just survive, not just be tolerated, but to demand better, to say no, to fight for more than another thread, another shift, another stale crust. By morning, the manager has banned all papers. The overseers tear through coat pockets during lunch, but they don't find yours. You kept it close, folded in the lining of your scarf, pressed against your neck. Still warm, still possible. It happens without warning. Clara doesn't show up for work. At first, no one panics. People miss shifts, sometimes. Illness, injury, or simply too broken to rise. But by midday, her absence feels louder than the machines. She didn't say goodbye. Didn't leave a scarf behind on the peg or a crust of bread on the table. Just gone. You ask around quietly. The nurse hasn't seen her. The manager offers no answer. The overseer shrugs and says, she was old, probably couldn't keep up. But Clara wasn't frail. She worked circles around younger workers. She was the one who held everyone together, a quiet voice of reason, a steady hand, the one who remembered birthdays and patch-torn sleeves. You find yourself watching the gate during deliveries, hoping to see her limp in, apologetic and tired. She doesn't. That night you return to the lodging house early. You sit on the floor where Clara used to, so her thread is still tucked behind a loose floorboard. You run your fingers over the fabric she stitched. A patch shaped like a bird, wings wide. You remember the stories she told, of Leeds, of her sister, of days when workers had a voice. Maybe she left, maybe she ran like Lizzie did, or maybe the factory swallowed her, like it does so many. You want to believe she escaped, that she found a quieter place, a bed that didn't ache, a sky without smoke. But as the machines clatter in your ears and the lint tickles your throat, you know the truth. Sometimes people just disappear, not with a scream, not with a bang, just with silence. And that silence stays with you longer than any noise. Your body fails you before the bell does. You open your eyes, and everything aches. Your limbs feel carved from stone. Your head pulses. Your throat burns. Every joint complains as you try to sit. You don't. You lie there, staring at the cracked ceiling, watching sunlight bleed through the curtain's edge. It's not sleepiness. It's not laziness. It's exhaustion. A deep, swallowing fatigue that feels older than your bones. You try again to sit. Your back spasms. Your chest tightens. The cold has crept into your lungs. You cough. Dry at first, then wet. You taste metal. For a moment, you panic, because missing a shift is not allowed. No work means no pay. Too many absences, and you're out. The street waits for people like you, sick, alone, forgotten. But your legs won't cooperate. You close your eyes. You picture the spinning frames, the belts, the breathless heat, the lint clogging every corner of the room. And, you can't go in today. Not because you won't, because you can't. Someone knocks on the door. You say nothing. They move on. Later, you hear the workers pass down the street, boots on stones, shuffling, silent. No one knocks. Again, you drift in and out of sleep. Dream and waking blur together. You hear the machines, then nothing, then the sound of Clara's voice, then the wind. When night finally falls, you sit up slowly. You're still burning inside, but you're breathing. You drink a cup of water, eat half a crust, stare at the door. You know you'll have to go back tomorrow. But today, just for today, your body said no, and you listened. You start seeing them in the corners. Not spirits, exactly, not in the way the church talks about, but presences. Flickers of memory burned into the wood and smoke. The girl who sang to herself, before the overseer silenced her. The boy who got caught in the belt. Clara with her quiet strength and her stories about the world beyond the gates. Ellen, coughing into her apron by the loom. You see them all, in the worn spots where their boots once stood. In the dents on the walls where carts scraped past. In the place where lint gathers thickest, where light never quite reaches. Their faces blur, but their weight remains. The factory holds them. Their breaths still seem to echo through the machines, faintly. A rhythm beneath the clatter. You wonder if anyone else hears it. Sometimes, during moments between tasks, when the overseer's back is turned and your hands move automatically, you stare at the floorboards and wait. One more whisper of someone who lived and worked and disappeared. It comforts you, strangely. Not because they're gone, but because they were real. They endured. And if they did, maybe you can too. You don't speak of it. No one does. But the others see them too, you think. In the glances they cast toward empty corners, in the way their eyes rest on a rusted nail or a cracked window pane. Ghosts, yes, but not haunting. Just present. Like the thread in your fingers. Always pulling, always reminding. You are not the first. You will not be the last. And the factory never forgets. It doesn't happen with a bang. There's no riot, no grand escape, no letter from a distant cousin with a train ticket tucked inside. You just walk. One morning, you wake before the bell and something feels different. Not in your body. It still aches. Not in the sky. It's still gray. But in your mind, a kind of stillness. The kind that says, this can't be forever. You packed nothing. There's nothing to pack. Your scarf is still damped from last night's cold. Your boots are worn thin. Your stitched square of cloth, the patch with Clara S. button and the children S. ribbon, goes into your coat pocket. You don't say goodbye. Not because you don't care, but because you know how words tend to make people stay. The gate is unlocked for morning deliveries. You slip through. Just like that. There's no chase. No one notices. You walk fast at first, heart pounding, convinced someone will call your name, drag you back. But no one does. The town grows quieter as you move away. The smokestacks fade behind you, swallowed by the mist. Your feet carry you past the bakery, the chapel, the graveyard with the crooked stone. You don't know where you're going. North, maybe, toward farms, fields, somewhere with air that doesn't burn your lungs. Maybe to a town where people look you in the eye when they speak. The path is muddy. Your stomach growls. But for the first time in months, you feel light. Because even if tomorrow you're hungry, even if tonight you sleep under the stars, you're not just a worker anymore. You're a person. And the thread, the one that bound you to the factory, to the lint, to the bell and the frame and the endless spin, has finally snapped. You walk on, into fog, into something like freedom.